Hello guys, welcome back to the Beastie Room. Now we are going to do a rehouse today of an absolute gem of a spider in anybody's collection. These are really sought after spiders and well deserved as well. And we are talking, of course, about the Grammostola pulchra, the Brazilian black. Now this is an absolutely beautiful spider from Brazil, and yeah, it's time we gave her a nice new house. She's been in here at the moment. Now we have a number of these, and to be fair, they have done really well in these boxes. It's quite surprising, but they have done really well. They are an incredibly hardy spider, so I suppose we shouldn't really expect much else from them. So what we're going to do, we're going to put her in this 30 by 30 by 30 Komodo. Now I know many people keep these guys really dry. I've actually found that although we can keep them dry, they do appreciate some humidity. So when we put them in their permanent homes, now this is actually an interesting point. When we put them in their permanent homes, we can get all our parameters absolutely perfect where we want them to be. So it means that we can muck around with things like our moisture levels, our humidity, all of that sort of stuff. We can really hone it in. Now when we have them in like the pots like she's in at the moment, this is purely a temporary maintenance home. So trying to get your parameters perfect in that scenario is not really going to work. So we don't even bother. So quite often, depending on species, it is dependent on species, we will keep them much drier when they're in these pots, because high humidity in them pots can be disastrous, can be really bad on our spiders. So we try and keep them a little bit on the dry side, same as when we do in the what do you call it, the cereal tubs. When we do them, we keep them much drier, and this is really beneficial and much easier to maintain. What we're going to do now, we are just going to have a simple hide here. Doesn't need to be anything too special. Nothing too special. Right. Now these guys, they do like to burrow, especially when they're young. They burrow quite a bit when they're young. But not so much as adults. As adults, they tend to be a little bit more out and about, which is nice for us, obviously. So what can I do there? Now we're going to use some grasses in this particular setup. So we've got some here. Now these are just normal grasses. These are sort of grasses that you'd put in your rockery, on your pond at home, anything like that. So we're literally going to take them out of there. That is going to go in here. Now I know you're all wondering, why are we not using clay balls and things like that? In these enclosures we don't really need them. It's not that massively important, because we're not going to be looking at having such a high humidity here. So we're not going to be looking at having our soil particularly wet. And we've got a different one here. As you can see, this one is quite a bit bigger than our enclosure, so we're going to have to give it a bit of a haircut, which is fine. It's not going to be the end of the world for this plant. So we're going to stick this one down in here. This one can go almost to the bottom. There we go. these tall grasses will do really nice in some of the bigger enclosures. So what we're going to do now, we are going to get our scissors and we're going to give this guy a bit of a haircut, and it will grow again. There we go, look at that. Should have been a barber, shouldn't I? What do you think? Right, so we're going to put that in there like so. Nice and easy. We're going to get a nice water bowl and we're going to put that up here. It can go in there like that. And we're going to put a little bit of moss on this top piece up here. Now the moss is twofold. One, it will help hold this piece of soil up on here, which will be nice. It'll also give it a really, really nice look as well. So we're going to put that in there. So where are we going with this? Right, we're going to cut that there. And then, so we're just going to scrape off the little bits and pieces. Now we got asked on a couple of questions that popped up on one of the recent videos. And this is about, you know, people being concerned about mites in moss that they've collected. Now, here in the UK, I have never ever had mites in my moss that will do any damage or affect my spiders in any way. In other parts of the world, I don't know. You know, you have to find out what it is like in your part of the world. It's most important that, you know, we don't have the same bugs and bits and pieces that maybe you guys in the States do, or in Australia, you know, all these different places around the world that you all subscribe from. You all have your own individual ecosystem and what lives there. So it's very important that you just check out for your own things. I know in America and that, you get things like fire ants and stuff like that, which from what I understand can be an absolute nightmare to many things, including us. So yeah, please check out. But here in the UK, we have no problem with anything like that at all. So just be sensible. Someone else also mentioned that they found small centipedes in their moss. And yes, we do get small centipedes in the moss. With our normal spiders, with our big stuff, from juvie upwards, these centipedes are no problem whatsoever. They're not going to cause any trouble to our spider. With tiny slings, they can do. But then if you think about it in a logical sense, if you've only got a very small sling and the biggest thing it's in is maybe something like this sort of size, you're not going to have much bigger than a little piece of moss like that within that enclosure. So it's very easy just to have a look and see that you've got no creepy crawly in there that's going to cause any harm to your spider. So it's very easy to check out, you know. We don't need to overthink a lot of this, you know. A lot of it is very simple stuff. So there we go. We are going to have a nice little enclosure there. I'm wondering whether we don't want that, do we? That doesn't look very realistic, did it? Sort of wondering whether I can get away. Nah, not liking that. I think we'll just leave it like that for now. I might have a look later on and see if I can find a nice piece of stone to go in there. But I think that looks quite nice. Alright, so we're going to fill a water bowl up. We'll give our plants a bit of water as well. So we can directly water our plants like this. Now an interesting thing here now, this spider I find does well with a humidity around about 70%. So 60 to 70% is more than enough for this spider. So as we've got a couple of grasses and we've got a bit of moss in here as well, we're not worrying too much about the numbers of our humidity. So all we can do is we can literally give our moss a very, very light spray every other day maybe. If you do it in the evenings, your moss will soak up that water and it will be more beneficial. We can also, with our grasses, we can just give that a little water, no different to how you would do a house plant in your living room. And that will give us enough to be able to sustain this spider with the right amount of humidity. Right then, so what we're going to do, I think that's a weird sort of looking enclosure, to be honest. It's not particularly wild looking, but it's quite pleasing to the eye. And hopefully that is what we're going to get, because this spider should spend the majority of its time out and about. Right, if you come over here, you can have a really, really good look at this spider. She is absolutely exquisite. And you can see there the jet black, it's like velvet all over. Now remember what I was saying about when we keep them in tubs like this, we keep them on a dry substrate. So as you can see here, the environment that she's coming out of here is very different to what she's going into. Now, as I said before, it's much easier to maintain her in a dry environment in one of these tubs than it would be to try and maintain her in a humid one. So if we keep them in a humid one, we have to really, really be on the ball and make sure that our enclosure doesn't sweat and things like that, because it can cause some serious problems for some of our spiders, for many of our spiders, if it's just too humid, too wet in there. Because, and a lot of it is because these tubs do not breathe that well. So we have to be very, very careful how we go about it. So it's easier to keep them on the dry side. It won't be harmful to your spider. She can stay like this for a long, long time, to be fair, without any issues at all. Now, as we said earlier on, the Brazilian Black, these guys come from Brazil. They do like it quite warm, I've found, but they quite like a cool nighttime as well. So temperament-wise, they are generally very easygoing, very sensible spiders. That does not mean you won't get one that might be a little bit defensive. So always be very, very careful. Here you go, she'll have a little wander now. Look at that, when she opens up, just absolutely beautiful. Now these take around about 8 to 9 years to mature from a sling, and that's at a steady sort of pace. Again, they're like the brachypelmas. If you keep them a little bit warmer, feed them sensibly, these guys aren't as slow as you would be led to believe. They can grow quite quickly, but they're not like a super fast spider. Very, very pretty. Now it's tempting to actually pick her up and move her by hand, but as you know, we are not advocates of handling our spiders with our bare hands. It's just not necessary. And even with a spider that is as calm as this, you often see people doing like handling sessions. We see it at the shows every now and again. You'll get other people that do parties and things. Quite often it will be one of these spiders, the Brazilian Black, or a Chili Rose, or maybe a Hamori or something like that, that they use as a free handling. So they encourage people to hold the spider and maneuver it and what have you. Do not fall into the trap of thinking that this spider will not bite you. I have seen these Chili Roses, all of them, with attitudes from hell. Some of them can be very, very defensive. So always be wary. I know that, you know, we can often say, oh, this spider's been doing this for years and it's never done anything before. There is always an opportunity that it may well bite you. So be very, very careful. I'm not saying you're going to get bitten, but just be prepared in case you do. Right, so what we're going to do here, we're going to move her into our catch cup. It's going to be simple as anything. She's good. So all we do is we put our catch cup there, and then with our lid, we can move it. See how she faced the lid straight away? We can move her backwards very, very gently. See how nice and calm she is. That's it. All we're going to do now is pick her up like that. She's not going anywhere. We can place her down and put her in. Now you see how safe that was. No stress. Our spider's perfectly happy. We had no trouble there at all. You know?
Pop her around a little bit for me so I can get a nice front view.
And this is what it's all about. You know? Getting it to the point where we can move our spider safely with no stress. And as you saw there, we just picked her up, moved her over, put her back in. No stress whatsoever. Now these guys will kick hairs. They are a New World spider. But generally speaking, if you're nice and gentle with them, they're not too bad. They're very, very stable spiders. And extremely hardy. So which makes these guys really, really good for new people, for beginners, because they are just so hardy. Extremely hardy. So it makes them an ideal spider. Now in terms of costings, these are one of the more expensive spiders on the market. You see them varying. One interesting point is actually when we see slings of these guys on the market, sometimes it states that these are captive bred. Now I would disagree with that a little bit. I have not seen or heard of anyone really that is captive breeding these spiders. They are incredibly difficult to breed in captivity, and I think most of what you see would have been from egg sacs that have been collected in the wild. They are then brought back, and then they are then sold as, you know, captive bred spiders. Just because they hatch out in captivity does not make them captive bred spiders. So they would have been wild caught. Now I'm sure there's going to be people out there that will say, hang on a minute, I've bred them. There's very, very few people, very few people. I don't know, you know, this is often a discussion that comes up in many of the groups and things, and no one really knows of anybody that has captively bred these guys. So always sort of, you know, little bit of caution there. Chances are you're probably buying a wild caught specimen, although it would have been hatched in captivity. So we need to learn a lot more about these guys so that we can actually make sure that we literally put them, you know, get them on the map and have proper captive bred spiders. So I think there's going to be a lot of work involved with these, and it's something that we're going to play around with now, and we're going to have a little go. I think these guys need a really good winter brumation, and that is probably the key to actual successful breeding of these. But there's a lot to be learned yet, a lot. Now feed wise, these guys will take on pretty much anything. As with all of the brachypelmas, the anaphelmas, all of these, they can be a little bit fussy with food. And by fussy, I don't mean what they will eat. They will eat just about anything. It's the time frames between meals. So you might get one that will feed, and then you'll feed it again next week, and then you'll feed it again the following week, and then all of a sudden it will refuse food. It doesn't look like it's in pre-molt. It just refuses food. And a month down the line, it's still refusing food. And now you're starting to get a little bit itchy, and you're thinking, what am I doing wrong? Why is my spider not feeding? It's nothing to do with probably what you're doing. These guys are notorious for fasting. So they will eat, get themselves nice and full, and then they go on hunger strike. It is not uncommon for one of these guys to go on hunger strike for a year. Really, they can last a long time without food. They don't burn energy like some of our other spiders. They are very slow metabolism. So don't worry if your spider stops eating. As long as all your other things are correct, then you should be fine. Don't panic. Keep an eye on the abdomen. If the abdomen is not shrinking, your spider is fine. If you see your abdomen is shrinking, then it's time to sit and think, well, maybe there's something else going on. So we can try different methods to try and get that spider to feed. But the abdomen is the key. Look at the abdomen. That will tell you whether things are good or bad. And you can then evaluate what you want to do next. Right. So I think you'll agree, an absolutely fantastic spider. I quite like this home. I like the grasses. I think we'll actually use a bit more of these in the future.
It's more like a hobbit home.
It does look a little bit like a hobbit home, I must admit. But I'm quite liking it. Yeah, I think it might be a bit of a personal thing, but yeah, I'm actually quite liking it. I think it'll be all right. We'll see. She might just destroy it in the next couple of days because they are quite prone to bulldozing everything about. So we'll see how she goes. Right then. Oh, one more thing, because it's driving me nuts, guys. It's driving me nuts. The aircon unit. Can we see the aircon unit?
Yeah.
Yeah. It is not on the wonk.
It's the roof.
It's the ceiling. The ceiling is higher at the front and lower at the back. This is perfectly level. Yes? Perfectly level. Do you think we would have gone to all this trouble and then hung our aircon unit on the wonk? No. No.
It does look like it, though.
I know it looks like it. To be honest with you guys, it drives me nuts every time I walk in the room and I look up and I'm like, oh, look at that. But it is, I promise you, it is perfectly level. Perfectly level. I wish I had a level here to show you.
No.
But it is perfectly level. The ceiling is on the wonk.
If that's any better.
Yeah, if that's any better. Right then. I hope you enjoyed this video. And don't forget, be calm, be gentle, and love your spider. And I'll see you all soon, guys.